Hey, good morning. Uh, it's 10:59 here, so I'm gonna go ahead and give it a few more minutes. I know I see some attendees are still trickling in, so we're gonna give it a few minutes, probably about another 5 minutes before we start. But if you're already in the room, welcome, and I'll talk to you in a couple of minutes. Again, welcome to those of you who have just joined. We're still waiting just for a little bit. I see some attendees are still trickling in, so we're gonna give it a couple more minutes, and then we'll start again, probably in about 4 or 5 minutes here. All right, looks like we've topped out. I'm going to give it one more minute here, probably 30 seconds, and then we'll begin. Okay, uh, good day to you, wherever you are. My name is Mario Carrasco, and today we're going to run a VE Studio webinar. So this is, VE Studio Virtual Training Solutions. Essentially, I want to jump into the hands-on portion. So I want to kind of demonstrate some of the new features we have. It's a very light demo, but it's going to take about 30 to 40 minutes. So with that being said, I am going to do a brief introduction of VE Studio for anybody who may be new to VE Studios to kind of give you a bird's eye view of what we're working with, and then show you the tool suite and kind of working with a couple of the new features essentially. So hopefully it's exciting. Hopefully there's some content here that you like. I'm going to go ahead and start off though. This actually works out because I see we still do have people trickling in. So I'm going to go ahead and start a new project. So again, for anybody who's new to VE Studio, this will be essentially show you how you can start a new project with just a couple of clicks. So I'm gonna go ahead and start a new project. We're gonna call this webinar, let's say 2. Go ahead and check this out. So I have a project directory already, so I'm just gonna go ahead and go to my unversioned projects, and let's go ahead and call this webinar 2. All right, easy enough. So new project, I'm going to go ahead and leave the default template. I'll explain that later. But essentially, I have a template that I can use, a default template with some examples that we can test, just jump right in and start testing our development. So hit OK there. And then let me actually go ahead and go over to mixed reality portal, make sure that that's OK as well. Okay, so you can see webinar 2, my new project has started, and this is our project initialization wizard. So this greets you as soon as you create a new project. It allows you to change the project name or the ports if you have any conflicting ports, but we don't care about that. What we care about is the virtual reality option here. So one thing to note is that we do allow you to flip back and forth between the two. So just because you select one or the other, it doesn't mean that you're locked into that target platform. And that's one of the how would you say, powers of VE Studio. So looks like initialization has succeeded. And then I have the option to launch the content import wizard. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. I don't have anything that I want to bring in now, but if you do, you'd be able to walk through this wizard to say you have a model ready to go, whether it's 3ds Max or an FBX. You can go ahead and select it here, and that would allow you to import that file into your project and add it into the system so that you would see it pop up in Unity, essentially. So that's good to go. We just created a new project, and again, this is just while we have some attendees still trickling in. So we just created a new project. The next thing I want to do is I just want to go ahead and launch Unity, because it does take a few minutes because it's a new project. Unity needs to go ahead and set the library, set the project up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make sure it has the correct version of Unity for me. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this directory. Let's go ahead and go to our Unity location configuration. Just because I have a few different versions of Unity installed. And so I want to make sure it does grab the right one. So I'm going to go to Program Files. Let's go to, it's probably Unity, and then Hub, because I installed it through the Hub. Whoops. Let's try that again. So Program Files, right, Unity, Hub, and then that should be good enough for me to go click through. Editor. Let's go ahead and copy that path out. Save it. Close that out, and now we can jump in. So we go ahead and launch Unity, and then I'll hop back to the PowerPoint demonstration. All right, that looks like it's good to go. So let's go over here. Okay, so again, my name is Mario Carrasco. I'm a software engineer here at Disty, specifically for VE Studio. We do have a sister product, Geo Studio, but purpose of today is VE Studio. And so, yeah, let's go ahead and jump into VE Studio. So, just a disclaimer: this is proprietary and competition sensitive and confidential. So, just be mindful of that. We do have a general overview and then the platform approach, essentially. If you've attended our training courses, you may recognize some of these slides. So a bird's eye view of VE Studio. Essentially, what we provide is we provide deployment. We allow you to, deploy your training solution to multiple platforms. For example, tablets or mobile phones. So we have, mobile refresher applications. Our bread and butter here, kind of what we started off with was desktops, PCs. We've also in previous years, we've deployed to cloud. So we have the Disty Schoolhouse, which was based off of AWS. And then kind of, going over here, so laptops, of course, same as PCs. Going over here, though, like now you have AR and VR. So we have supported VR in the past, and we've kind of revamped it in the last year or so. So one thing to note is that we do now support mobile VR. And so mobile VR does allow you to, for example, the Pico or any Android-based headset. And so that's kind of what I want to touch on today, as well, to show you what that build process looks like and the different changes that accompany that. So I'm going to go ahead and push on through because it's kind of a tight schedule. VE Studio, again, if you're new to virtual training or virtual maintenance systems or VE Studio and their role in it, typically you have a virtual training system, right? And this is going to be on some platform, on some target. Within that virtual training system, you're typically going to have, something that's rendering the virtual environment. So, OpenGL, DirectX, whatever it is, we use Unity as our rendering engine, but you have a virtual environment. You have a simulation engine. So a simulation engine would be, for example, you have a headlight on a car or a truck. You turn the knob for the headlight to, turn on, but the battery needs to be connected, all the wires need to be connected, etc. So the simulation engine would read all the states of the different objects, and then essentially output whether the resulting state of the headlight should be on or off, essentially. So finite state machines, if you will. Here you have the instructor operator station, or this could even be the student station or standalone station, but essentially you have that station, the target platform. And then finally you have what we call the training assistant. So this will be essentially the UI that shows the lessons, the steps, which step you're on, incorrect actions, etc. Provide tools, and these these screenshots are outdated, but the concepts have stayed the same for years, right? So you have the tools for your trainee, etc. So those are the four components typically that you see in a virtual training system. So VE Studio specifically, what makes VE Studio different? What does VE Studio have to offer? So here's that kind of same architecture, but you notice we actually have this extra layer here, which we call the message manager interface. So this is really nice because you can actually plug into the message manager. So say you want to create your own application, whether it's 2D or 3 off on the side to kind of supplement these, complement these others, you could do so. And it would communicate, it would get all the data from these other components through this message manager interface, through that network traffic. As far as development domain, you can see here, so we have a typical workflow or pipeline. VE Studio is really a suite of tools. I don't know if I hit on that earlier, but you can kind of see that visually here. We just offer tools to support the entire pipeline of development, essentially. Or even if you're doing rapid prototyping, it's also very powerful in that regard as well. So here, you go through analysis, requirements analysis into the development phase, and then naturally you go into the build and test phases, and then you have your final, deliverable rendering. We use currently Unity here, but again, actually in the past, and this is a great segue, in the past, we actually used our own in-house render engine, and then we recently transitioned to Unity as it became more viable here. But this is a great depiction of kind of what we have to offer alongside Unity. So, here, this is what you would do normally with Unity, and VE Studio just provides so much in terms of, reducing code duplication, reducing the barrier of entry into starting a new project, or even transitioning a project or maintaining a project, etc. Okay. So here is our patented process. This is what, again, is what makes at its core VE Studio so powerful, is that you see we have all of these inputs into the Fidelity Matrix relational database. So it's, again, data driven. And then you have the output into the virtual environment. So this would be your training requirements for operator and maintainer procedures. You have your requirements analysis, and we have a tool that automates that as well. So look at your procedures, and it would automatically identify objects and actions on those objects, and the lesson steps, etc. You have your technical drawings, so you can put in schematics as well, and the schematics can be dynamic and animated too, and interactable. So that's really neat as well. CAD data, as long as you have a commercial CAD converter, you can go ahead and input that into the system as well as any photo shoots if you have photographs or 3D scans, as well as commercial 2D imaging tools. All that goes into the Fidelity Matrix, and then from there, you can start outputting lessons, creating the content, behaviors and constraints, the 2D elements, linking the 3D objects to the behaviors and simulation engine, etc., all to output your final deliverable. All right. And so kind of abstracting it a little bit, essentially what you have is, without VE Studio, you need a lot of development. Whether it's one project or you have multiple projects, you require a larger workforce, programmers, etc., who are really comfortable with Unity. What we do is this tool was developed, for our own projects. So essentially we found like, hey, this is actually very useful. We can carry this from project to project, and other people find this useful as well. So what we do is we found that we can actually reduce the workload, the workforce for Unity, and we can actually throw that we can focus that into content development. So now we have essentially a couple of lesson developers instead of just one, and they can move back and forth between projects. Testers are reduced as well because we did have that automated testing tool. And then graphic artists, they stay the same. They don't really change regardless of what you use. But aside from that, it really does make this very easy to the point where if you have, a basic virtual maintenance training system, you actually don't even need to code. If it's just remove and install procedures, you don't need to code. The behaviors are there by default. All right. So with all that being said, I know that was a lot, but we can actually go ahead and jump into the hands-on demo. So I'm going to go ahead and switch back over here. Unity should have loaded, so let's go ahead and check on that. Perfect. It looks like it did. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that my VR headset is cooperating with me this morning. So let's go ahead and go over here. So if you're on an older version of VE Studio, or you're a current customer and you've recently updated to 2022.3, this is what you can expect. Excuse me. Sorry about that. I'm a little bit sick this morning, so I may have to mute occasionally. So here's what you can expect. You'll see that we do have, of course, we do have our content window. This is nothing new, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and process this actually. And then our scene's already loaded, and you can see I'm already set to VR because that's how we initialize the project, right? But you can see here, I have XR-Rig Pico. This is a mobile headset. For the purpose of this webinar, I'm gonna go ahead and use a wired headset. So I have a Windows Mixed Reality headset here that I'm going to go ahead and find the rig for. So this actually gives me an opportunity to show you how easy it is to swap out a rig. You can see here we have two rigs. You can actually expand this if you have, say, a Vive or you have a Quest, etc. You can actually create your own rig here. I just recommend you copy, one of these existing rigs, and then you can modify it as you see fit. And of course, because we use this tool internally, as we start, developing on other headsets, if we do create rigs, we'll try to push those out to you as well. Okay, so that rig is there. Let's go ahead and change a few things. So the first thing I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to see that isolation mode controller. There are a couple of scene references that I need to carry over into my new rig. And this looks a little bit tedious. We've actually improved this process, so it's not, you don't have to do this every time. Again, any issues that we see like internally or any annoyances or minor annoyances, we try to fix, and we push those out to you if we do fix them here, or as we fix them, I should say. All right, and then the next thing is going to be the main camera. So I have that isolation mode here on my new rig, and then the second thing is going to be, there's a couple of game objects here. So eye tracking is one that needs the main camera of our rig. So that's going to be pulling from, oh, there you go. That's going to be pulling from You can see here it was pulling from the Pico rig, so I'm gonna go ahead and pull it instead, reference it to the Windows Mixed Reality rig. And it looks like here, I'm gonna disconnect my headset for 1 second here. I think it's taking over for some reason. So let's do that and see if you know. Okay, I apologize for that. I've been having issues with my GPU this morning, so it looks like it finally caught up with me. But no worries, I can go ahead and launch Unity again. And we'll see if it agrees with me. So while that's loading, I can actually speak to, again, if you're new to VE Studio, again, this is, it was developed in-house at first, and we found that like it is, an incredibly useful tool. Most of what you see is modifiable. So for example, here, I'll just refer to it as like home base. This is like your starting step here. So you can see here we have these buttons. You can actually configure and modify this to the needs of each project. So usually if we have multiple projects, just to give you an example, like we'll change the background, some visual stuff, aesthetic stuff, but we'll also update the buttons if we find that there's a tool for one particular project that other projects don't use, and we don't want each of our developers or our team members having to like manually input instructions or open the command line, whatever it is. We create buttons for that. Okay, so let's see if Unity has loaded. It has. All right. So I believe I lost my changes. Yeah, which is okay. So I can go ahead and do this real quick. So XR rig, let's try that again. And so because I'm having trouble with this machine, this is not VE Studio, it's my GPU on my machine. I'm gonna go ahead and just show some of the effects here in the scene view. And then at the end, I will go ahead and try to reconnect my headset and see if it agrees with me, so I can actually show off what that looks like. All right, so again, we have the isolation mode. So let's go ahead and grab that. Yep. Over here. And then we have the 2 game objects that require the camera from our rig. So I'll go ahead and grab that here. 1 and 2. And again, we made this easier in the 2023.1, which is we expect to release in the next couple of months here. So that looks good to go. I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. Pico rig, I'm gonna go ahead and save my scene. And then I'll normally enter play mode and check, but again, it looks like my GPU is giving me a hard time. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually take a slight change in plans. I'm gonna go and launch the training assistant. So our training assistant, which you may remember from that graphic earlier, is the platform where the instructor can assign lessons, create lessons, author lessons, etc. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to launch that here. And I need to change a couple of settings. So the first setting I'm going to change is going to be the full screen setting, because that's a little bit hard to see from the live share. So just open that up, change that to false. That way I can drag the window around. Save it. And all right, so we should be good to launch. And the reason I'm doing this is I want to actually, I would like to go ahead and create a default class for, say, my mobile headset. One thing is like when you're on desktop, you need to sign in as a user and you need to sign in with log into a class essentially in order to receive your assignments. With a headset, because you don't have the same UI. Let's go ahead and resize that so it's a little bit easier to see. Because you don't have the same UI, what we do is we just make it so that if you have one class, I'll just call it default, you automatically log into that class, so you don't have to worry about all this on the headset. So you can see that unlocks some of the buttons here. So it looks like we're good to go. We have that class set, so I can go ahead and close this. And then the next thing is I want for my VR session, I want it so that I don't see that white screen. So I'm gonna go ahead and change single screen mode active to true. So the display on my head, on my face, the headset, will be my single screen. And I also want to see the lesson content on that screen. So I'm going to also change this to true. A couple of other options we may touch on in the Q&A, but like here you can see VR laser. So we're going to have a controller model with a laser, pointing out from the controller model. You can also change it to VR grab if you want hand models instead. Grab. if you so please. But for the purpose of today, again, I'm going to go ahead and keep it as laser. Okay, so training assistance should be taken care of. And the last thing is going to be the simulation engine. So I'm going to go ahead and hit this build simulation.bat. And that's going to go ahead and build, and it's going to copy over the changes. Excellent. So now I should be ready to jump in and able to go. Okay, so that's fine. Now that we have that, first, again, I wanted to show, VR and the interactions first. I'm actually gonna take a deviation here, and I'm gonna show the Universal Rendering Pipeline, so URP. And that comes from, let me actually pull that up while Unity's loading. From Unity. I'm gonna post in the chat a couple of links, but essentially you could just Google it and you'll see, you get a good overview of what URP is. There are a couple of things actually, like for example, we have a comparison table. They have a comparison table. So let me just copy that over here. Again, while Unity's thinking, we can just kind of go through this. So I'll post that into the chat as well. That way you have some references for later. So this might be this other one. There we go. So let me go ahead and make that. I believe I have to do this as an announcement. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So yeah, so you can look at this. So we used to use the built-in render pipeline. So you can kind of just scroll through this at your leisure and see what the differences are with URP. And then there's also a second reference I have here about like some suggestions essentially about post-processing effects, especially in regards to mobile VR. So let me go ahead and pull that up here as well. Right, so this is, their main documentation page for Universal Render Pipeline. Post-processing, you can see like how to configure, and it kind of gives you a really, you should probably go to the latest here, or whichever version of Unity you're using. So I think it'd be 13.1 for us. And then if you scroll to the very bottom, so it gives you a nice tutorial on like how to set it up. And then you go to the very bottom, you can see that they actually have suggestions for VR. So, certain effects can cause nausea and disorientation that you want to avoid. And so like for high-speed apps, it says, avoid these, motion blur, chromatic aberration, etc. So again, I highly recommend, you take a look here if you are trying to apply post-processing to your VR application. But I can actually show you what that looks like live here. So Unity's loaded. So what I'm going to do is just really just a couple of clicks. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create an empty game object. I'm going to call it post-processing. Then I'm going to add a component. I'm going to add a volume as a component. I'm going to hit new. And that's honestly, yeah, at this point, I hit, add override here, post-processing. And now I can actually add, for example, bloom. This is a nice, easy one that should be easy to see. So I'm going to lower the threshold just so that we can see it immediately. Intensity, I can go ahead and start bringing that up. And hopefully you can see that the bloom does indeed go up. So really washed out here. Just really a couple of clicks and now you have that effect. One thing to note is that there is a difference between here. Just bring this down just a little bit and let's actually make this easier to see there. Okay, so you can see in the top half that you don't see the bloom effect. The reason is because you actually need to enable it on your camera. So this is per rig. So here we have our Windows Mixed Reality rig. The main camera on that rig, there's this over here in the inspector window, there's this post-processing checkbox. So I hit that and you can see immediately, that's applied. And that's it. Like that's really all it is in order to get the post-processing effect. So just, go ahead and add another one. Let's see here, lens distortion. So they said don't use lens distortion, but we can go ahead and play around with it. You can see how that looks as well in that bottom screen. All right. So that's post-processing with Universal Render Pipeline. Again, it's a little bit different from previous releases of VE Studio. Okay, so now that we've gone through that, the last thing, how am I doing on time? Okay, I'm actually running close to the end. So the last thing I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to launch VR again and see if it'll cooperate with me. So let's go ahead and plug this in. So what'll happen is, let me actually close Unity first, because that tries to load whenever you connect a new device, and that sometimes causes issues, is what I found at least. And I'll actually just cancel out of this. I'll save this manually, and then I'll ignore the rest. Okay, so I am using a much older headset just because it's a little bit easier on the GPU, or supposed to be. Today it's not. But I'm going to go ahead and connect that, and it's going to launch Windows Mixed Reality Portal. So I'll kind of show you, as you have the same setup, I'll kind of show you what I'm doing here. Let's pull that over. So you can see here it says it's ready to go. It's waiting for me to put on the headset, so let me go ahead and initialize this. Let's see if it agrees this time. Okay. So it's still slow to react, so I think the same issue is going to happen. If that's the case, then I'll try to record a video and push it out with the webinar recording too of what this should look like. But again, this is a machine issue. I do apologize for that. It didn't crop up until this morning. So let me go ahead and make sure my controller is recognized as well. And okay, there we are. Yeah, this this may not go all the way through, but we'll try. So we have that. I'm gonna go ahead and pause this so it's not hogging too much. And then let's go ahead and launch Unity again. So here I'm gonna go ahead and hit edit scene. And that's gonna take another second. While that is there, if you are new to VE Studio or you actually want to have hands-on, we do have a training course coming up in about 6 weeks, I want to say, so the end of March. So you can actually just type into your web browser or search engine Disti VE Studio training, and it should pop up within the first few hits. So, yep, right here. So you can come over here. You can go ahead and register. At the bottom, we do have our dates posted for each quarter, except for Q4. So we usually do a training course as well the week after the IT-ITSEC, convention here in Orlando, the week after Thanksgiving in the U.S. So feel free to go ahead and sign up if you so choose, and then just let us know if you have a preference between the two. We try to evaluate, for each session, what's more viable for the attendees, for the registered attendees. So if you have a preference, let us know, and we'll try to see what we can do there. But yeah, and speaking of, you've already found it, you've seen it before, but you can check out our website for it. Just another overview. We have a YouTube channel as well if you want to see some other live demos. You can just type in Disti VE Studio on YouTube, and you should see the channel pop up. Okay, so Unity did load. It is slow for me, so I don't think this is going to work actually. So if that's the case, I will not fight it. I may just let it go. Okay. Okay. All right, it's agreeing with me. So another new feature of VE Studio 2022.3, you may have seen that we've changed the build menu so that now we do include mobile VR. So this was actually introduced in 2022.1. In 2022, the year 2022. So those releases there have these changes. So here you can see you can build, debug and release are the two that I mostly use. And then we have desktop and tethered VR. Tethered VR is essentially wired VR, is physically wired, right? But if you do have mobile VR, so say you have the Pico headset, they do, and I believe the Meta Quest also has a similar app. the Pico specifically has what's called the streaming assistant. And so what that does is it streams your desktop. So the executable is running on Windows and it streams it to the headset. So if you were doing that for lesson development, say, you would also do so. You would use this menu here. But if you want to build the actual APK, the Android package, then you would use this mobile VR menu. So that's just a new change, kind of subtle if you didn't, if you didn't know where to look, but it's there for you. And then everything else is pretty much the same, right? So you still do have this other VE Studio window with all of our plugins for, the database behaviors, etc. All the content that you know and love. So that being said, let's actually go ahead and try to launch VR and see if it'll work. Okay. I may have missed my chance. So I'm going to go ahead and start all as tethered. And you can ignore these errors. These are my errors from development. Okay, and I think it's trying. Let's check here on the headset. And I'll give it like one more second here before I call it. All right, so I do have that bloom effect I probably should have removed, so that's going to be kind of gross. But if it lets me launch, then you can see that it will connect to the training assistant and let me run a lesson. But while that's loading, let me go ahead and pull up some announcements that we have. So probably easier if I just copy and paste this over. One of the questions we had was, what has changed with the most recent releases of VE Studio? So I'll go ahead and I'll just paste this over here. Do a blank document. So these are our release notes from essentially the last year. And so what has changed really has been a wireless VR support. So that's going to be APKs, etc. I'm actually going to go ahead and kill Unity because I can hear it struggling in the background. And so we do have that VR support for mobile headsets. So we've tested Quest 2, we've done Pico are the main two, but really this would be for any headset. We also upgraded to Unity 2021 finally, LTS. So that was a huge push internally, and a huge benefit for us. We've been wanting to do that for a while now. We finally got to it, and so moving forward, we should be keeping up there. Universal Render Pipeline update again. I posted that link in the chat. So that's also a huge one, and it also comes with some inherent performance improvements as well. And then we also, for the mobile headsets, we are actually able to now incorporate the message manager, the training assistant, and the simulation engine into the mobile VR build, so into the APK itself. Whereas on Windows desktop, they run as separate executables. We also restored the wired VR support for Windows Mixed Reality because the whole move for supporting mobile headsets did mean that we had to change some things for wired headsets as well. But now they should map one-to-one, essentially. Like what you build in mobile VR will be the same in tethered VR, and so on. And then finally, for the most recent release, we did replace UNet with mirrors. So if you don't know what UNet is, again, that's something that you can just pop into Google, but Unity UNet deprecation will give you like the entire, they have a frequently asked question and like updates and everything. So you just click on that, you can kind of see why UNet was deprecated. And then you can also look for UNet mirror, and that should pull up, mirror networking, right? The replacement to UNet. Right, so that was a big change, and that impacts essentially the team training functionality, so multiplayer and VE Studio. So that should be improved, much improved in the future, moving forward. Again, Unity 2021, LTS, and then some user experience improvements. VR is where we're really kind of focusing right now. So you'll continue to see like heavy improvements with VR as we move forward there. And then also some sample project updates. As you can tell, you probably saw that aircraft in the hangar. You can tell that was not made by artists; that was made by engineers. So we're hoping to include some more, at least examples there to make it easier for you to start off and start a new project and at least like see what you need to do to get your training up and running. Improved lighting, and then also we added PBR materials library. So those were the spheres in the hangar template background with different materials. And I'll actually try to show off now. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and transition. I'm a bit over, so I'll transition into the Q&A. So are there any questions from the audience? Let me go ahead and come over here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and see if we can, okay. So the first question from Karar is, what types of virtual solutions can we create by using VE Studio? So for example, is it just designed for military aviation or are there other sectors? So that is a great question. VE Studio, it started like bread and butter, like it started off with like, military vehicles, not necessarily aviation, but we found that it applies to maintenance of any machine. So one example would be printer, a large printer for printing out posters. Another is like healthcare. Actually, we had a few projects, and I'm not sure how much I should say, but essentially you can use it for like healthcare machines. You can use it for the maintenance of anything. Aviation, sure, because like we do have some default behaviors for like circuit breakers and other things. So that is really useful. But the other behaviors, and I can actually pull this out and kind of show you some of the behaviors. You can apply it to any vehicle machine. And even if you're not doing maintenance training, we actually did a project for safety training. So it's like you're walking in a hangar and you have to like go through these different scenarios and determine whether the person, whether it's a safety violation or not. So that was a really fun project. And just kind of shows the flexibility of VE Studio. You are not locked in. You really do have the power to modify it to whatever you need to adapt to. Staying on track though, let me go ahead. I went on a little tangent there with the behaviors. So just to show you, like we include all these behaviors by default, right? So you can actually jump in and you can like, if you need booleans or strings, or if you need doors, etc. Like we have those behaviors for you here to make it easy for you to jump in with your project, regardless of what it is. All right, I see we have another question from Austin. Let me go ahead and publish that. Okay, so the question from Austin, are there any optimization tools for managing high fidelity assets like CAD files and scans? That's a great question. I'm honestly not the best person to answer it. I do know that we have in the past used, I always forget this because this comes up once in a blue moon. I believe it's called Pixies. So again, like this is just something I've heard through the grapevine. So I'm not, sure how much I should mention of it, but like I have heard that for CAD and high fidelity, you can use this, and that will actually make it a lot easier for you. Hopefully that answered your question. Another one here. Ooh, this is a good one. Okay, so another question, really good question from Jason. So what are the built-in behaviors or metrics / tools that are linked to eye tracking? Curious there. Because this is so new, like we just started supporting mobile VR, and we do use the Pico headset, so those do support eye tracking, and we're playing around with it internally. So we're still working through that. And again, like as we find useful behaviors, as we find different things that we need across projects, we'll publish those. To answer your question, like we don't have any built in yet, just because it's so new and like we're just now filling out that field. A great question. I mean, I'm sure there's more to come in future releases, just because that is in demand feature. And that being said, of course, there's a distinction too. So like you can use VE Studio to develop yourself, or you can hire us to build something out for you. So if you do find that maybe you don't have the right team to build out the features that you need, say you need like the eye tracking metrics, you can hire us and we'll build that out for you as well, to your specifications or to your liking. All right, let me go ahead and get my bearings here. Da-da-da-da. All right, any other questions? And excuse me, I'm gonna go on mute just 1 second. I apologize for that. I'm still a little bit sick here, so 1 more second. Okay, so I just published another question. So we do have the question, can we create a collaborative VR learning session using VE Studio? I mean, 3 to 4 users using the system in tandem to complete one task. Great question. For desktop, we support that, and everything that we do on desktop inherently, like it can be run in VR is how it's been in the past. So currently, I'll say currently it's not in the default VE Studio pipeline, baseline product, but that's something that we're looking to kind of recuperate. Because again, when we moved to mobile VR, we kind of lost some features and functionalities there. If you've seen our demos in the past, like we did have team training, is what we call it, the collaborative VR learning environment for AR actually, and also VR. But with our most recent moves, there are some features that we're trying to restore, essentially. All right, a couple more questions. And then kind of going back to, where was it? Jason's question. We actually do have an internal behavior for Pico eye tracking. It's just not yet released into VE Studio. Again, it's one of those things where like we will do it internally for our internal projects, and then once we feel like it's polished enough for external release, then we'll go ahead and we'll release it to you. And if you have any additional questions, like if you've bought VE Studio or you're using VE Studio or you're curious, you can always ping us at our support line. Let me actually go ahead and throw that out too. Right. So if you're working on a project, you can just ping us, and then we'll be able to, kind of point you in the right direction there if you have any questions or what have you. And I'll go ahead and publish that as well. Okay. So another question. So I'll publish this one. It's a good one. Is there some kind of documentation or step-by-step tutorial to start from scratch with VE Studio, like your cockpit tutorial for GL Studio? We do have documentation. It's not as full as I would like it to be. So like I've been, in communication with the last couple of training classes, like some things were kind of made clear. So I'm actually trying to go through and make that better. So we have a few things in the pipeline to kind of fill that out a little bit, including examples as well. But, kind of going back a little bit, docs.dc.com, you have Geo Studio and you have VE Studio. So yes, we have documentation. It's like the basic, like what does a training assistant do, the simulation do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But like step by step by step, that's something that we're improving. And we've already made some improvements in the last couple of releases as well. All right, one more. And continue to send questions. We still have a few minutes here on the webinar. Okay, another great question. So any performance watchouts with this version compared to previous versions when it comes to models, objects, scenes, etc., especially as it pertains to mobile VR limitations. So the mobile VR limitations, that's going to carry across like any platform or tool that you use. So just of course, like, lower poly counts, just those are things, there's probably a list or a checklist that you can kind of Google because that's something that you're always going to hit. With our move to the universal render pipeline in Unity, and just upgrading Unity to 2021. I think we were on 2019 last time. there are some inherent improvements. So like once we did that, some of our applications that were running, they actually got a boost of frame rate. I think like a couple dozen frames as well. So yeah, I'll say like VE Studio won't be the hindering factor. It'll be, you know, your model in Unity as far as mobile VR goes. All right, a couple more. Ooh. Okay. So I'll hold off on some of these questions because these are really getting deep beyond the point of the webinar, to be honest, and that's more of like a one-on-one demonstration session. So I apologize there. Feel free to send me, let me see, I'll contact you after the webinar and we can sync up there. Any other questions? And while I wait, let me actually go ahead and I'll delete this post-processing effect and I'll actually switch into, where was I? Let me go ahead and post this as well. So I'll post the training first. I don't think I posted that here. All right. So again, a reminder, we do have that training course. The dates are there on the website. So choose yours. If you want a demonstration or you do need to have another meeting or schedule a meeting with us, or you just want to talk to, you know, business development or salesperson, just let me know and I'll try to point you in the right direction. Again, you can reach out to either, you know, disty.com. I'm pretty sure we have a form there if you're to go there. Or if you're currently evaluating VE Studio or, you know, you're a current customer, you can reach us at VE Studio support at disty.com as well. And I'll be happy to get back to you there. Okay, so I'm going to give another minute for any additional questions. I know there's a delay on my end. But otherwise, I believe this meeting is being recorded, so it'll be sent out. So again, like if you do have VE Studio, you can do exactly what I did for today, and that'll set you up with the essentially hopping into, you know, VR with your rig and being able to test that out. Kind of going back, so PBR materials, we do have some examples here of those. So let's see if I can move around. So you can see that we have this materials library added. So it's really, really nice. It looks really, really good. I'll expand this out a little bit so that looks better. Let's hop back there. Right, so yeah, check it out and see how you like it as well. If you have any questions, you can reach out to us, of course. Okay, so it looks like we don't have any other questions. I do apologize for that hardware mishap. It's just the nature of how these things go. It was working fine completely all week, and then this morning that GPU issue started cropping up. So hopefully I can have, you know, I can record a video and send it out to you guys alongside the webinar recording. But aside from that, you know, thank you guys for attending. Thank you for the questions as well. And if you have any follow-on questions, please let me know. If I didn't get to your question, I'll go ahead and I'll reach out to you, and then I'll, you know, we'll have that one-on-one conversation there. But thank you again, and enjoy the rest of the day wherever you are. Thanks.